later we'll try again with a knife, skim off the rest. But you can get the big pieces with your hand. This one's pretty lean actually. Okay, so we're gonna let it drain for just a little bit, and then I'm gonna put it over here on the table and cut the ribs out. See, there's these little bones that are here in the ribs. They go this way. They're tiny little ones, but they go along the edge of the rib. Like right here, you can see. See them right here? Mm-hmm. Now you have to make sure that they stay with the ribs and don't stay in here, because as you can imagine, it causes a big problem when you make a roast and somebody starts carving into it and stuff. You still have a bone going lengthways. So that's why I just don't like feeling the meat. And then you feel down here till you feel the last bone. So here was the last rib, so that's why I cut it here. And you just kind of draw a straight line from here to here, and then just cut down. And then just start cutting underneath. Try to leave as much meat, since we're selling the belly. We don't want to leave all the meat on the ribs, so we try to cut it as close as we can to the bone. The meat gets the seasoning, you know, and the rub in it. Ribs out, then we do what you were seeing before. We score it. It doesn't have to be beautiful because it's going to be, you know, covered up when we roll it up. But they do have to be deep, or, you know, what's the point? This is the reason we sharpen the knife every time before we do this. This is the part if you're not paying attention, you can injure yourself. Flatten it out as much as you can, because you don't want as many of these wrinkles in there, because later on when we put the salt on here, that's where they all accumulate. You want to smooth it out as much as you can. And then the rest is just manual labor. You're going to make like 3 passes, at least, on each one. And I like to go in different directions on each one, just to make sure I don't skip any spots. And of course, the reason we're doing this is when we get done putting all these little holes in the skin, we're going to put a nice layer of coarse salt, sea salt, kosher salt, whatever you have. Can't use iodized salt. The grains are too small, and iodine isn't good for it. But what that's going to do is you put the salt on it. It's going to sit on. The salt's going to stay on this side of the skin, but it's going to suck all the water out, make your skin nice and crispy. Get the edges. Next step, we're putting the salt on. Nice tip is make sure people don't get stuck with salty meat. This part, just tuck everything underneath, so all you see is the skin. Because we use a lot of salt. Good. You don't want to be salting the meat directly, because the meat's going to absorb the salt. And see what I mean about the wrinkles? So you just have to be mindful of them and then go back. And when the salt starts working and the water starts getting drawn out of the skin, you start seeing little puddles of water. And then you're able to like smooth the salt out and make it evenly distributed. So if you're here, you can actually already feel some of the, see how it's shiny there now? Notice you can already feel that some of the water starting to come out of it right away. Just spread it around a little bit. See how it's all sticking in my hands now? Can't really tell, but it's, you can see it's starting to get shiny. Okay, so we just set that aside. for about an hour or so, longer if you can, because today we were able to do it longer because we were doing 8 bellies. So we can leave them at this stage for a long time, make sure the skin gets nice and crispy. But at the minimum, leave it there for an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. And then when you come back, you'll see big pools of water that have all been drawn out of the skin. And we get nice crispy skin the next day. So we're salting the skin of the belly and spreading it evenly as we could. And what that was doing was sucking the water out of the skin, making it so that when we cook it tomorrow morning, it's going to be nice and crispy. And it's going to stay crispy. And if you can take a quick look, you can see all the skin is wet now, and you can see the water's been extruded and extracted or whatever from the skin. Here's a little bit of it pooling. All this stuff was inside the skin before we started. So the skin is now that much more dehydrated. It's going to make it nice and easy, make it nice and crispy tomorrow morning. We don't really need to do anything with this because the next step is we're really interested with the other side of the belly. So we're just going to take this, flip it over, and here is our belly and inside. See, there's all the salt and water left over from when we treated the skin. So probably just letting the skin marinated in there for a little while longer. The skin's not going to get any saltier, but it'll get crispier, so that's good. So here you have 8 times 2, and we don't have to worry about anything later. Next step is our seasoning slash rub.
The secret ingredients.
Yes. You probably tell there's mustard in there, but there's something sour, there's something sweet, there's something pickly, there's something savory, there's garlic, kitchen sink is everywhere. So, just distribute it evenly over the belly. And when you see what we're going to do a little bit later, you can see why we're using so much. And this is the reason that we scored the belly with the crisscross cuts earlier in the preparation. Is we want to rub all this stuff and massage it on in down to the cracks, bits and pieces down in between. Put more on if you need it. I think we're pretty good here. But you can see it's working itself down inside. And you get it from edge to edge because you don't want to be that person where you're thinking about that one person who's going to have one piece of pork. You don't want their first bite to have no seasoning on it. You lost the customer for life. Okay, so that's massaged in. The next step is we're putting our aromatics in. We've got lemongrass, we've got pandan or screw pine, and we've got green onions. And all of these are very fragrant, very aromatic for approximately 3 hours, not counting the time they spend in there overnight. So you're going to have a lot of time for the flavors to mingle. What we do is try to keep in mind that as the belly cooks, it's going to shrink a little bit this way, it's going to shrink a little bit this way. So when you're putting these guys in here, you don't want them to stick out too far out the ends or you're going to have big bushy. I mean, unless you're into that and you like it for your presentation, it's nice, but otherwise it's just going to burn when it's in the oven. So a couple of leaves of pandan. Yeah, smell that. Ooh. It's like peppery, citrusy vanilla. It's wonderful. Wonderful. And then the green onions. Doesn't matter if they're not straight out of the garden because they're going in the oven first thing in the morning. Just try to kind of evenly distribute it. Looks pretty nice. Make sure there's enough in the middle. All right, and then we're ready to rock. We're ready to roll this thing up. Not a very, there's no real technique. It's kind of trial and error. Like I said, every belly is a little bit different than the next one. So I found it easier just to roll it towards you. Tuck everything in there really nicely. Start with the middle. We're going to start in the middle and work our way out. So we're going to pull that up and we're going to grab this. If I had somebody helping me, this would be where we would use their fingers or their thumb to hold it, but we don't really need it. Once you get this down, you can do it yourself. And there you go. That's the first one, which is the toughest. Tie it off there, put it down, we move on to the next one. Just using the string to hold the bottom of the belly up like that. And then put it over, maybe 2 or 3 times. Tie a nice quick knot. Don't give it a chance to loosen up. Tie it off. And so on, all the way down the belly. We're just trying to tuck everything in nicely so there's nothing hanging out, so that when we cook it tomorrow, we don't want little pieces of meat hanging out, getting overcooked, burning, singeing, etc. And remember, this part is going to be the part that's on the bottom. Okay. And then the last one's a little tricky. There's always a little bit of stuff hanging out. Just use your best judgment. Get them all tied together. This one doesn't have to be so snug. Now, if you like it scalloped like that or segmented like that, you can tie it really tight. If you want it to look more uniform, you don't have to tie it as tight. Just remember that you need a little bit of overlap here just to make sure all the good parts don't end up in the bottom of the pan tomorrow. Okay, let's go back up and we'll finish this side. Yeah, and this is the fat, meaty end of the belly. Doesn't really wrap as well, so there's not quite as much overlap. Just try and do the best you can. And remember, tomorrow when you're cooking this, when you're putting your meat thermometer in to measure the doneness, which I guess you're going to want to be about 165 or so, you're going to want to put it in this end, somewhere towards this end, but not necessarily all the way at the end. Make sure that you're in the fattest part of the belly, and you get a better idea of how done and the real temperature of the belly. And the reason I go through the extra trouble of tying it around 3 times before I pull the knot is so that it will stay in place when I do the second half of the knot. Otherwise, it's just going to slide back open again. Or you have to, if you don't want to do that, then you have to have somebody to hold their finger down and take care of that for you. So let's get rid of the extra string here. You don't want to have anything oily or greasy on the skin. So if you see any of this mustard sauce or anything that's not going to look good tomorrow when you serve it to your customer or give it to your customer, go ahead and wipe it off. Let's clean up tomorrow. After we're done cooking, if we can just peel up the foil and throw it away, it makes it a lot easier to clean up, get out of here and go. So this is our tray that we're going to store the prep belly. 1 down, 7 more to go. Put this here. And what we do is just take another opportunity to draw a little bit more moisture out. And since we have so many orders tomorrow, we're actually going to put another one of these on this tray along with this one.